Here's something to ponder: marijuana legalization. As you probably know, 2 states in the United States have legalized cannabis: Washington State and Colorado. They both have legalized it and taxed it. And so I want to talk about marijuana policy today. Now, I am not talking about medicinal marijuana, marijuana for medical purposes. That is legal in many states, although marijuana is still classified as a Class 1 drug by the federal government, and on the federal level, federal laws say that it's still illegal. But I want to talk about it on the state level. And I want to say a couple things. First things first, we don't have the money or the resources in this country to prosecute people who violate marijuana laws. We don't have the resources. We don't have the prison space. The problem is too many people are in our prisons, both state and federal prisons, because of, frankly, weed. And once someone is in prison, they almost become useless to society. Who is likely to be in prison? People who have already been in prison. Once you've been in prison, you're more likely to go back to prison. You're less likely to be able to contribute to society. So society-wise, we cannot afford to keep sending people to prison. And also money-wise, we can't afford to keep sending people to prison. And so marijuana policy has to change. And I want to say a couple things about that. First of all, personally, I don't support legalization of marijuana. I support decriminalization of marijuana. I think that if you're caught with certain amounts of it, certain small amounts from it, and you do not have intent to sell, if you're selling marijuana, or if you're caught with so much marijuana it couldn't even fit in your trunk, yeah, you should go to jail. As well as if this is your second, third offense, you should go to jail. But if this is a first-time offense, if it's a very little amount and there's no intent to sell, I think that you should not necessarily be put in prison. Even if it's your second chance, let's say, there's no intent to sell, it's a very little amount, potentially we could increase fines, or I think perhaps better, we should require community service. If you're caught with small amounts of marijuana, instead of it going on your criminal record and eventually this being part of the 3 strikes you're out and now you go to prison, what if we require community service, say, I don't know, 25 hours or 30 hours per ounce? That way everyone who's caught, or 25 hours, 30 hours per joint, that way every person who's caught has to better society. That is a great way to better our society, forcing these people to do community service, maybe in addition to the fine. But let me say, here's why I don't support marijuana legalization. Many people have used the justification that people are going to do it anyway. We might as well just legalize it and tax it. Now, on its surface, in theory, that's a good justification. It makes sense. It's true. People are going to do it anyway. Why not just legalize it and tax it? But under that justification, we're going to see a snowball effect, or we could see a snowball effect. Well, think about prostitution. People are going to solicit sex for money anyway. They're always going to, whether it's illegal or illegal. Why don't we just legalize it and tax it? And I could think of probably 5 or 6 other examples, and I'm sure you could too. So under the assumption that people are going to do it anyway, so why don't we just legalize it and tax it? Well, you have to carry that elsewhere. If people want to argue that marijuana should be made legalized and taxed to bring about revenue, it'd be more so like a sin tax that we have on cigarettes and alcohol. Well, then, if you want to legalize something that society deems ill, a societal ill, like marijuana, because in addition to a medical or medicinal purpose, I'm not really sure how marijuana benefits society besides making drug cartels a lot of money, or dealers lots of money. how? How can you not? You have to apply that reasoning elsewhere. You have to continue the reasoning. You have to, the same people who are arguing for medical marijuana, I'm sorry, not medical marijuana, who are arguing for legalized marijuana because people are going to do it anyway and then we should just tax it. Well, you should also be arguing for legalized prostitution at the same time because it's the same rationale. In that theory, we should just legalize and tax everything that society frowns upon because people are going to do it anyway. You know, people are always going to be adulterous. There'll always be adultery. There'll always be people smoking marijuana. There will always be people either becoming prostitutes or hiring, soliciting prostitutes. Why don't we just, legalize all of that and tax it? To me, on the surface, the reasoning makes sense, but when you apply the reasoning elsewhere, I don't think that the reasoning holds water. Finally, what I should say is I think a lot of what I'm saying today is in vain because I do believe that eventually, yes, marijuana will be legalized and taxed throughout the United States. As of now, it's on the state level. Only 2 states have it legalized and taxed. But I think in the next 15 to 20 years, you'll see more states doing so. And I think eventually down the line, either the overwhelming majority of states will have it legalized and taxed, and maybe there'll be a change to the federal laws in the next 20 to 30 years, and it might be legalized and taxed on the federal level, possibly. I guess there would be a state and a federal tax on it. And so I do think that it is inevitable, and I know that I'm a college student. I'm in the very small minority, incredibly small minority of college students who do not support marijuana legalization. As I said, I do support decriminalization, but just like Orrin Hatch said about gay marriage, I do think that it is inevitable, and so I'm not putting up a huge fight about it, but I do want my views and the rationale for the decisions that I've made and why I believe what I believe to be out there. There's something to ponder.